Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions regarding this watch. So today we are discussing the Ressence Type 3 White. This is the original Type 3 White that came out in 2019. The watch was redesigned somewhat. It was facelifted for 2024, so keep in mind you're looking at the original version of the model as it came out in 19. Although described as a grade 5 titanium case, you can see that the vast majority of the watch is actually the case back sapphire and the dial side sapphire. So yes, titanium case, no, not much of it. It is grade 5, which is great for resisting scratches, and I find that subjectively, just by observation, polished grade 5 might be the most scratch-resistant metal I've encountered, short of something like Damasco ice-hardened or Zinn Tegament. We have these loop-style lugs, but rest assured, the watch uses conventional spring bars, which you can just barely see if you look inside. The watch is 44 millimeters in diameter. In terms of thickness, it is 15.7. Lug-to-lug, it's 53, and then it uses a 22 millimeter strap. And again, if you look really close, you can see that spring bars are used here. It is not a sewn-on strap. So you can see the strap is in leather, and it has an embossed pattern along the top as well as extended oblong perforations for the pin buckle. And the pin buckle, of course, features a little Ressence logo in the pin because, of course, it does. Ressence designs its watches in Antwerp, Belgium, and they're made in Switzerland. And Benoit Mintiens, who founded the company and still runs it, is an industrial designer by trade. He wanted something that was unpretentious, approachable, and down to earth, and so he thought the hand was an inviting symbol to embody the spirit and values of his brand, which is why you see it everywhere. So we have that little pin buckle. You can see we have a counterweighted style buckle design, and then there's a little recess for the pin in the buckle. So all of this is designed to go together as one piece. A lot of thoughtful design here, including the way this thing is built. So let's talk about the basics. This dial is full of oil, a little bit like the Bell & Ross Hydro and the Zinn UX. Those were both made by Zinn. This has a different purpose. So those watches were made to create an incompressible dive watch that had a oil-filled dial that you could read from any angle underwater, because the oil and the sapphire have the same index of refraction. Well, it works just as well on the surface as even above the waves. They still have the same index of refraction. So there's no distortion, and you can read this watch from any angle, which can be useful if you're looking at your wrist at an oblique angle. There's 37.5 milliliters of oil inside the watch and 7 bellows that can expand and contract to allow for temperature variation. That said, there is a thermometer on the dial that lets you know when the watch is getting into a temperature range that's too cold or too hot. Rest assured, it is extremely difficult to approach those extremes. Another advantage is that this watch is actually quite simple to service. Because the base caliber is an automatic ETA 28242, automatic winding, 36 hours of power reserve, 4 hertz beat rate, simple and cheap to service. The dial is immersed in an oil bath and thus self-lubricating and sealed for life. So I asked Benoit, really, how often do you have to service the module? He said he's only seen a handful since the original oil-filled Type 3 came out in 2013. So if you're wondering about service, it's basically an ETA service. You still want to send this back to Ressence to have the job done, but it's not going to be major surgery regarding exotic components. Now, the watch has no crown, as you can see, and you set it and you wind it from the case back. So you could see it's sort of both a regulator and a planetary. A regulator because hours, minutes, and seconds have been separated, and then a planetary because the ROCS module that sits underneath with well over 100 individual parts and a lot of manufacturer watchmaking. That ROCS module spins everything relative to the center, but also on its own axis. Take note, what appears to be a seconds hand is actually what's called a runner. It has a 180-second circulation rate, so it'll make one circuit every 3 minutes. It's there to show you the watch is running, not to track seconds. You can also see that the watch is both a regulator and a day date, as we have a day indicator and then a date. So, for example, if I want to know what time of what day, this is what I do. I can see it's 10. But then I go to the day indicator. And you can see those two little orange enclosed arcs. Those are the weekend. It moves clockwise. So you'll take note that I'm right at the end of the travel of the first orange enclosed arc. So that's Saturday. So if we're at the end of Saturday and we're looking at 10, then we're looking at 10 p.m. on Saturday. That's how it works. And of course, there's a little date below. Now, the watch is a lot of fun to play with. You could set it using the case back. You can also wind it using the case back. You will find that there are friction zones, maybe 90 degrees of rotation, and you back to and fro through that friction zone to wind the watch. Notice it does have a rotor. It does automatically wind, but you can wind it if you wish to do so. There are also quick setting modes that allow you to rapidly cycle the date and the day indication if you want to correct these. They are built in. There is a system that is native to the ROCS module that allows you to make those corrections. There's also, because you're probably wondering, how can we have all this liquid in the watch with the movement? There's no direct connection between the front and the back, so if you move the case back too quickly, it can skip a little to protect the module, but also to prevent oil from leaking through. Benoit knew that if he was going to build a oil-filled module with any kind of seals or plugs, it would eventually leak through. So this is all sealed, and a magnetic coupling connects the movement and the case back setting to the dial side, both to protect against damage and to avoid leaks. Possibly the biggest surprise with this watch is that it is explosively luminescent and legible from every angle, and you really get to see the vault and the camber of the dial when the watch is loomed in the dark. And note, everything is loomed. That said, it's not particularly water resistant. They advertise 10 meters or 1 ATM, splashes and rain only, and really if you want to get your Ressence wet, get a Type 5 diver. That's the safest way. That's the way to go. That one is also oil-filled. The oil-filled Ressence models, the Type 3 and the Type 5, are the flagships. So if you want to buy the best of what they've got, this is definitely the way to go. So reach out to Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase and pricing details. And one last note about durability. I mentioned polished grade 5 titanium really doesn't scratch, obviously. Because this watch is almost all sapphire and the entire top is sapphire, it's effectively a sapphire case, so anything that touches the sapphire is almost certainly going to leave no marks, making this almost a scratch-proof watch. Again, reach out to Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.